The first half of the Memphis Grizzlies regular season has come to a close. And now it's time for the All-Star break. But before we get to the All-Star break, it's All-Star weekend where three Grizzlies in particular, Jaylen Wells, Zach Edey, and Jaren Jackson Jr. got a chance to put on for the city of Memphis. I think at least one of them will do some really good things. Let's talk about all that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer at the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. Right now, I'm coming to you. You can't tell from my background, but I'm coming to you from San Francisco, CA. I'm in California right now, coming to you live with Locked On Grizzlies. And thank you guys for tuning in with me on this special edition of Locked On Grizzlies as we talk about All-Star Weekend and all things Memphis Grizzlies coming up. Before we get into that, remember that today's episode, remember that we also have a special newsletter podcast for today's episode as well. And that's introducing the Locked On Grizzlies Daily newsletter. It's the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox, written by my co-host Joe Mullinax, who's getting a day off today. So sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Go take advantage of that now over at FanDuel. We got a lot to talk about on today's show, starting with all things All-Star Weekend. We're going to talk about Jaylen Wells. We're going to talk about Zach Edey, Jaren Jackson Jr., and some bold predictions here from San Francisco. If my sounds a little bit different today, it's because, I have to pack the luggage. And, it's a long weekend, right? I'm out here in San Francisco. I didn't want to overpack. So I packed the luggage a little light, and I couldn't fit my microphone in a suitcase. So, stick with me if the sound isn't up to, my typical level or whatever the case may be. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. We got to start today's show talking about the Rising Stars Challenge, which will take place on today. The Rising Stars Challenge, two Grizzlies will be in it, Jaylen Wells, Zach Edey, and a nice opportunity for both these guys. Both players are well-deserving. Both players took completely different routes, right, to get to this point. I think when Zach Edey was drafted, we all kind of figured that he was going to have a pretty big role on the Grizzlies, and it's kind of played out that way. He's the Grizzlies' leading rebounder, some ups and downs this season, but, that's what's expected of a rookie. But overall, he's been a really solid player, I think, for the Grizzlies. And speaking of solid, I think that's one of the best ways to describe what Jaylen Wells has done. It's not a lot of flash. It's not a lot of pizzazz and all that. It's just solid basketball that leads to winning results. That's what Jaylen Wells has given the Grizzlies. He's been one of the top rookies. You can make an argument that he's the rookie of the year at this point of the NBA season as a second-round pick out of Washington State. So two guys who really have a chance. They deserve this, right? Both players have played really well, very deserving of these opportunities coming up. But first things first, the Rising Stars games, it's 4 teams. It'll be 3 teams made up of, Rising Stars and whatnot. Then there's a team that's made up of predominantly G League Rising Stars, featuring Reed Shepherd and a host of other players. And the way the games will work is it'll be 2 games of 4. The 4 teams will play 2 games. They'll go to 40 points. So Zach Edey and Jaylen Wells, they're on the same team. They'll play in a game. They'll go to 40 points. If they win, they advance to the championship game. And in the championship game of the Rising Stars Challenge on Friday, you go to 25 points. The team that gets to 25 or surpasses 25 points first advances, wins the Rising Stars Challenge, and advances to Sunday for a chance to take on one of the All-Star Weekend teams that we'll talk about a little bit later in today's show. But we got to start off talking about Jaylen Wells and Zach Edey. And we'll do Jaylen Wells first because, quite frankly, I think this is a bigger opportunity for him than Zach Edey. Zach Edey is the more household name, or however you want to slice it. There's a few things as we get into the Rising Stars Challenge and All-Star Weekend that I want to see from Jaylen Wells. And the number one thing you want to see from Jaylen Wells, just relax. That's what I want to see from Jaylen Wells. If you watch Jaylen Wells play pretty much since he's been in the NBA, I mean, he said it himself. From paraphrasing his quote to me, he basically said this is going to be the first time in his NBA career he hasn't had to pick up guys 94 feet. And you laugh it off until you really think about it. And you're like, man, that's been his career so far. He's not going to have to do that in the all-star setting. So he gets to relax a little bit, have some fun, enjoy himself. And I think it'll be fun to kind of see, Jaylen Wells in kind of that down-to-earth environment a little bit, whereas he's usually guarding the Steph Currys, the Damian Lillards, the Lukas, and all those guys of the world. So a little bit different task for Jaylen Wells in this one. But another thing that I want to see from Jaylen Wells is I want to see him let it fly, as Taylor Jenkins likes to say. Jaylen Wells right now is tied for the Grizzlies lead in made three-pointers with another all-star. That's Jaren Jackson Jr. They're tied for the Grizzlies lead in made three-pointers this season. He's been remarkably solid. We talked about how over the last month or so he's kind of tailed off a little bit from percentage-wise numbers, but he's had good games, in that stretch where, he's still shooting the ball from three-point range. So maybe it's a little bit of a rookie wall, but it's not a sign of, any type of slowing down, on his end. So I think what you have in Jaylen Wells is a guy who could really capture the moment and just let it fly. And that let it fly mentality kind of takes me into my next and last point when it comes to Jaylen Wells. Make a name for yourself. I've been talking to some people. I've been in San Francisco since Thursday now, since yesterday, and you get to talking to people around the league. Some of these people will have votes, right, for Rookie of the Year. And some of these people just are basketball heads. And, talking to people, like, who do you think's Rookie of the Year? And Jaylen Wells' name is coming up a decent amount. Like, people know the name Jaylen Wells. But if you stick with me here, they don't know the name Jaylen Wells. People don't know his personality. And maybe it's because he's a mild-mannered guy. Or, he's not Zach Edey, who was, the big-time, player of the year as a junior in college, player of the year as a senior, this polarizing prospect and all these things. Jaylen Wells kind of flew under the radar. He was a D2 Sonoma State a couple years ago, played 1 year at Washington State. Boom, jumps into the draft, second-round pick. Again, this is an opportunity everyone's going to be watching. It's a chance for him, like you said, if he lets it fly, he's going to make a lot of three-pointers. And if he makes a lot of three-pointers, everyone's going to say, that's the Jaylen Wells that people in Memphis have been talking about. That's the Jaylen Wells that if you look at the odds for Rookie of the Year, he's near the top. That's the Jaylen Wells that you've heard about, but you haven't really seen much of. I think that's kind of the general consensus on him around the league at this point. Now, in Memphis, we know what's up. And I think the word is getting out a little bit with what he does on the defensive end. But the point is, this all-star setting, a lot of eyes are going to be on Jaylen Wells. A lot of eyes are going to be on Stephon Castle, who's arguably the other favorite for Rookie of the Year right now. A good opportunity for Jaylen Wells to kind of make a name for himself in this setting and really to catch some eyes of some viewers. And speaking of catching some eyes of some viewers, 7'4", 300-pound Zach Edey won't have any problems doing that. All-star settings is different for a guy like Zach Edey. He's more of that old-school traditional center, and this is not really going to be his type of game. His style isn't really made for it. When you watch him play, it's set screens. It's the hook shots, and it's posting guys up. You're not going to see a lot of post-ups in all-star game settings simply because guys don't want to bang. They don't want to, get hit in the chest and battle for position and all that. Like, no, this is an all-star game. We just want to work on our skill work, make some shots, get these 40 points so we can win this game. Simple as that. So when I think about the outlook on this for Zach Edey, it's simple for me, and it's have fun. Just go out there and have fun. Zach Edey is going to play on a team that is really good. I think when you look at the rosters, for the Rising Stars, challenge. They have one of the best rosters, without a doubt. The roster that they have is arguably the best one. Like, I think there are a couple rosters out there that are really good. But when you talk about the roster, this is Team C, by the way. Their coach going to be coached. Their honorary coach is Chris Mullin. Stephon Castle, co-favorite, maybe the favorite for Rookie of the Year. Dalton Connett, Jaylen Wells, the other probably co-favorite for Rookie of the Year. Keontae George out of Utah. Zach Edey, as we just mentioned. Ryan Dunn is going to be on this team, as well as Trace Jackson Davis. So a nice talented squad that they have over there. I think when you talk about who's the best competition, it's probably Team Mitch, in my opinion. Team Mitch, you got the Thompson twins, Amin and Azar on that team. You got Bilal Coulibaly is on that team as well. Yves Misi, Bub Carrington. So they got some nice talent over there as well. But I still think, that team with Jaylen Wells and Zach Edey, you got some nice talent. So overall, really talented team. Really looking forward to seeing how they stack up in the Rising Stars Challenge. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Jaren Jackson Jr. fares as well. This is going to be a big opportunity for Jaren Jackson Jr. In this All-Star game, his second All-Star game. We're going to talk about that much more here coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to Jaren Jackson Jr. and start talking about his All-Star outlook, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Look, I love DoorDash. And right now, I'm out here in San Francisco. DoorDash comes in handy for me. And NBA fans, make sure you get ready for DoorDash as well, because when they swish, you save. Thanks to the Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. Make sure you remember that, because it's simple. When any player scores 50 or more points in a game during the 2024-2025 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Look, if you haven't created a Dash Pass yet, you might want to go do that, because you can take advantage of this opportunity, because this is the NBA. Guys are going to score 50 in their sleep, and we got a great opportunity with you to take advantage of this right now. So sign up for the Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. You must have a Dash Pass account. Again, you must have a Dash Pass account to be available for this option. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Look, and remember, this is from noon to midnight. So you're one of those early birds, you're trying to get up for breakfast early in the morning, this is not it for that. So make sure you go take advantage of that opportunity right now over at DoorDash. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, talking Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. has had a terrific year for the Memphis Grizzlies, and he's been one of the best players in the NBA, period. And in the eyes of Zach Kleiman, he's been a top 5, top 10 player. And we just talked about with Jaylen Wells, right? This is an opportunity for him to kind of, shed light around the league on, what he brings to the table. In a way, I feel like people know what Jaren brings to the table. Like, there's this, again, one of those things where you just have a little coffee table talk, or, little conversations over wine, or whatever you want to call it. Like, you sit down with people at these all-star settings. I'm out here in San Francisco talking to people, and Jaren's name keeps coming up. So people know what Jaren's doing in Memphis. People, have voted him Defensive Player of the Year, so everyone knows what he's capable of on the defensive end. This is a great opportunity for Jaren Jackson Jr., not even just on the court. I think off the court, this is a great opportunity for him. He'll be out and about, over the course of this weekend, doing things and kind of, building on his brand, which is another part of All-Star Weekend, that the off the court, aspect where players get to kind of expand on their brand or whatnot. But we talked about the format for the Rising Stars Challenge. It's important to point out that the All-Star Game format is different for the first time ever as well, before we get into this what Jaren Jackson Jr.'s team looks like and all that good stuff. So it's going to be 4 teams, 2 games, just like Rising Stars. Just like the Rising Stars, those 2 semifinal games will be played to 40 points. The first team to 40 points win. So you got 24 All-Stars, right? So there'll be 3 teams that have 8 players, 8 All-Stars apiece. The other team, as we mentioned earlier, will be the winning Rising Stars team. So you have a winning Rising Stars team, and then you'll have 3 teams full of NBA All-Stars selected by players, media, fans, and coaches. There. Now the difference between the Rising Stars and the All-Star game is the second game, the championship game, the final game between the 2 teams. In the All-Star game, you're playing to 40 points or till you surpass 40 points. So that game will go to 40 instead of, like with the Rising Stars game, their second game goes to 25 points. Now getting into the rosters. A lot of people have been talking about how these rosters have been built. And if you look at them, there's 3 rosters of All-Stars, and one is mostly filled with international guys, players who are from all over the place. Another roster is, I think Shaq's OG roster is what they're calling it. It's mostly filled with, older guys who you consider the vets, so to speak, the guys who've been in the league for a long time, however you want to slice it. And then there's a team of quote unquote, the youthful stars, right? The younger All-Stars, so to speak. And that's the team that Jaren Jackson Jr. is on. So if you look at the rosters and you just look at the talent, I think most people will say that Jaren's Young Stars squad is probably the least talented squad of the 3. And you probably don't believe me, but I'm going to explain it to you. So the OGs, as they're calling Shaquille O'Neal's squad, you got Steph Curry, Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum. The names speak for themselves. I mean, a lot have been there, done that, on that roster. The global stars, you got Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, leading MVP candidate right now. Nikola Jokic, leading MVP candidate right now. Donovan Mitchell, Alperen Sengun, Pascal Siakam, Karl Anthony Towns, Victor Wembanyama, and they also recently added Trae Young on this team. The young stars. With the young stars, you got Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Anthony Edwards, Darius Garland, Tyler Hero, Jaren Jackson Jr., Evan Mobley, Jalen Williams. So with the young stars team, the immediate thing that stands out is Jaren Jackson Jr., Evan Mobley, they're going to have to hold it down pretty much as your bigs. Whereas for the global stars, for example, even without Giannis Antetokounmpo, you got Jokic, Alperen Sengun, Pascal Siakam, Karl Anthony Towns, and Victor Wembanyama as your quote-unquote bigs. So it's a little bit different makeup. And the OG's roster is kind of the same way, right? With Anthony Davis being injured, and he was supposed to be a part of the OG roster, they don't really have bigs. So it's going to be interesting to see how these teams, play without these bigs, or so to speak. Whereas, this young stars team with Jaren, Evan Mobley, they got a couple guys. And you'll see, how much does that really matter? When I think about who can win all-star games, because I don't imagine these guys just playing a lot of defense a lot of times when we think about all-star games. Who has the most shooting? And Anthony Edwards is capable of going off. Darius Garland, Tyler Hero. On paper, again, they have what some people are considering the weakest roster of the 3. But it's very possible that Jaren Jackson Jr. and his group can sneak out of there by doing some damage. So looking forward to seeing, how Jaren fares in this setting. Follow my coverage over at the Commercial Appeal over the course of the weekend. We'll talk to Jaren on Saturday morning ahead of his All-Star practice. We'll have video coverage of that as well. So you'll see videos. You're going to see him talking about All-Star weekend, what he's been doing, the practices and whatnot. So a lot of that will come over at our coverage at commercialappeal.com, as well as on X at Damichael C. You'll see a lot of my coverage of Jaren Jackson Jr. and his team of young stars as well. I think they got a talented squad, but we'll see how much that means for them over the course of All-Star Weekend. Now we got to make some bold predictions. We're going to make some bold predictions on All-Star Weekend next. But before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, when the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started, and there's no other place to get in on it than FanDuel. Because FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, whatever it is, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Make sure you go take advantage of all these great opportunities right now. New FanDuel customers can bet $100 and get new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. You don't got to bet that much. All you have to do is bet your first $5 and it has to win. Remember, if your first $5 bet wins, you can get up to $150 in bonus bets. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join right now. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. NBA All-Star Weekend bold predictions. So I got a couple. I'm not Joe Monax. This is usually what I leave for my co-host. It's just me today, and I'm going to go out there a little bit, not too much on the limb, but I got a couple things that I'm looking forward to happening, and you probably got a sense of what those things are based on the conversations that we've had so far throughout this episode. The first thing that I'm going to say, my number one bold prediction, because I only got two. It's already this is out of the ordinary for me on the regular. So my first bold prediction is you're going to see more than one Grizzlies player on Sunday night. It's not going to be just Jaren Jackson Jr. playing on Sunday night in the All-Star game. Jaylen Wells and Zach Edey will advance. Now, I mentioned the team that I feel like is their best competition, the team with the Thompson twins on it and whatnot. But I'm telling you, a team that has Jaylen Wells, Stephon Castle, Keontae George, and then I'm imagining, like you're going to 40 points in the first game. And if they win that first game, then the second game is only the 25 points in the Rising Stars Challenge. That's when a guy like Zach Edey, I feel like, can be a real big difference because players aren't going to be able to just get to the rim and get free points. I think this team is one of the two most talented teams in the Rising Stars Challenge. You can make an argument that they are the most talented team in the Rising Stars Challenge. And I think that alone will help propel them to Sunday. And we may get a chance to see Jaylen Wells, isolation against Jaren Jackson Jr. Or Jaren Jackson Jr. actually told me that he tried to dunk on Zach Edey before. And, of course, didn't really work out for him. But I don't think it was because Zach Edey blocked it or anything like that. But didn't really work out for him. So, looking forward to seeing. Maybe we get to see that matchup a little bit. But I think there's a strong chance Jaylen Wells, Zach Edey, they'll be playing in Sunday's All-Star game. And then my second prediction is more broad. It's less tied into the Grizzlies and more to just the overall construction of the NBA heading into this All-Star weekend. And I'm going to say that the new All-Star game format is going to be likable after the fact. Now, if you've been paying attention, when this format was announced, I think it was in December, when it was announced, it was kind of frowned upon from some players. Kevin Durant came out and spoke against it. Grizzlies star Ja Morant spoke out against it. Ja Morant straight up told me, I don't even want to play in the All-Star game because of the format. Didn't want to play just the format. He didn't want to be a part of it. So when you factor all that in, I think you kind of have low expectations for the format. And you also got this sense of nostalgia from a lot of fans, right? A lot of fans say, hey, I want the old format, but I want the East versus the West with the throwback jerseys, and everybody gets to wear their own team jerseys. And I say, okay, if that's what you want, do you want guys playing defense like those guys were playing defense? Or do you want guys shooting 10 half-court three-pointers and and getting to the rim with no resistance, whatever the case may be. Can't have the best of both worlds. I mean, you probably can, but it's very unlikely. The point here is I've been hoping that somehow they could make this game more competitive. We need it. It's hard to watch. It's been hard for me to watch. I can't stand watching these recent All-Star games. Can't stand it. It's no defense. And, it's cool a couple times. Like when Damian Lillard and Steph Curry were trading the half-court three-pointers. Like, that's cool. Like when a couple guys, you throw a alley-oop from half-court and a guy windmills it or whatever. Like, that's cool. But when you look at the overall picture, and you're saying the final scores 225 to 212. It's not fun to watch. It's not entertaining. It's just free. I mean, look, I'm ranting a little bit. I didn't mean to rant on this a little bit. Like I said, these are my bold predictions or whatever the case may be. I just want to see good basketball in the All-Star game. And I feel like going to 40 points with this target score kind of makes the players lock in a little bit more. You don't got as many points to play around with. Like, in the All-Star game previously, like if a team goes up 100 to 75, you're probably thinking, no sweat, we can, knock down 10 open three-pointers and boom, we're right back in the game. Like, it feels like that in some All-Star games. Whereas in this case, you're going to 40. Like, you get down 25 to 15, you got to get in defensive stance and kind of lock in real quick. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing the best guard the best. Game on the line, 38 to 38. Who's going to get the last bucket? I think this new format, for all the negative comments that it's gotten, I think it'll breed more competition. I'm thinking when we come back and we're recording our next show, I should be saying, hey, guys, I told y'all that this new format was going to lead to more competition. If we see the same old lack of defense or whatever case may be, then I'm done. Like, I don't know what else you can do to the All-Star format because clearly there's not much else that can be done at that point. Look, remember that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter, the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. I believe Joe Mullinax will have you on the next show back on Monday. I'll be traveling back from San Francisco. Again, make sure you can follow all my content over on X at Damichael C. I'll be posting everything over the weekend. If you want to follow all my written and the video work, you can go also follow over at thecommercialappeal.com as well. We'll have everything covered for you quick, fast, in a hurry, and live, starting with today, Friday, talking to Zach Edey and Jaylen Wells for their media sit-down interviews. And then we'll have the Rising Stars Challenge later on. Locked On Grizzlies is also free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.